What is the most common case you encounter in our country, and what do you think the reason for it? Do our deeds that we do unaware reveal psychological information? What is the most basic emotion that leads a person to commit suicide? And if we have such feelings, how should we manage them?
He used to cut his arm, dip bread into his blood and eat. He was such a patient. People have a lot of things. I have everything, but I'm not happy. You go back to the age of childhood. If you do not manage it well, they become hostile to parents. Neither family nor society will remain. When a person takes that substance, he lives in a fantasy world. She approached his penis with fire. Since the child received toilet training in this way, sexual fears arose in the child.
What kind of problems await those who were not loved enough when they were children?
There are usually three types of people who are not loved enough in their childhood. Those who grow up without love. First, there is no love. There is excessive discipline. Children growing up in such an environment become antisocial. They're prone to crime. Such kids are apt to commit crimes. The second group has no love, but inconsistent discipline. One day they act this way, the next they act that way. In such cases, unbalanced personalities and borderline personalities appear in people. A perception causing them to ask about everyone, do they love me or not, occurs in the person. The third type is loveless but with lax discipline, being unaware of the presence or absence of the child at home. If there's an education and parenting style allowing everything, children probably get everything easily. No love, no interest. What happens after a while? Those kids become drug addicts. Since they get everything easily, they want to get things without effort and without getting tired. The reward-punishment systems in the brain are not well developed. The most important feature of love is that it develops the reward and punishment systems in the brain. If there is love, the brain's reward system has a larger pool. After that, he can manage it better. If the person has grown up without love, the reward system of the brain is driven by fear. He doesn't see life as secure. People see life as fearful and feel lonely in such cases.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We saw that 80% of our audience, including this video, are not subscribed to our channel. As you know, we are a non-profit organization and advertisements are disabled on our videos. So the only reason we are asking for this is to spread the truth. It may seem like a small act, but inshallah, it may be a means of guidance for many people. Now let's click the subscribe button and let's walk as an eternal passenger.
How can a person know that he is mentally depressed?
There are four main criteria of psychological harmony. First, to be at peace with oneself. Second, to be at peace with his immediate environment, family. Third, to be at peace with his social environment. Fourth, to be at peace with his professional life. If there is harmony in these four areas, that person's mental health is good. In such cases, it is also considered as psychological resilience if all four areas are harmonious. If one or two are harmonious and the others are not, it means that his psychological health will eventually deteriorate even if it feels good at the moment. To this end, one needs to learn harmony in four areas. It is very important. Psychological health is not just about being healthy right now. Total psychological health is important, and that is at the end of life. It is always about the decisions that a person will make in the future.
Recently, psychological TV series are in demand, and people's interest in them is great. Is this really a necessity?
Definitely. In the current state of the world, people have a lot of things. I have everything, but I'm not happy. What does one do when he isn't happy? People need such issues. When one feels the need, the desire arises. When the desire arises, it activates itself and interest arises. As the philosophy of life created by the humanity of modernism changes the priorities of people, such rich but unhappy individuals will increase in the world.
At what age should a mother start to tell her child about Islam? And when is the child's psychology ready for it?
More important than when to start telling is how to tell. Religion has two parts. One, the form. Two, the essence. The form part, worship, rituals, practices, religious practices, its essence is ethics. If you do not teach ethics to a child, you're not regarded to teach him religion. You will teach only a formal Islam, and it is broken by a small storm. In this freedom environment in the world, a religious education formed with the concept of shame, sin, and prohibition, formed for the sake of parents, breaks in a small crisis. When the mother teaches the child, she should teach with the language of behavior. Honesty needs to be taught with live examples, rather than giving a 10-hour lecture on lying. Instead of teaching religion to the child with this feeling of shame, sin, and prohibition, saying, this is a spiritual need for you, it's a need due to these reasons. It is necessary to teach how useful it is for him to obey ethical principles. It's your right to learn this. It's your need. Learn it for yourself, not for me. It is necessary to teach religious values with these feelings.
What What kind of psychological problems await a child who is subjected to domestic violence?
Of course, there are various types of violence. For example, when we look at the childhood trauma scale, there is physical abuse and physical neglect. What is physical abuse in a child? Locking the child in the room, punishing him without explaining the reasons. How can the child understand it? He understands it as an unfair attack. Hatred and anger develop against the mother. A patient came to us, we searched the childhood trauma, and do you know what we found? His mother was holding a fire towards his penis while the child was using the toilet. And since he learned toilet training in this way, sexual fears arose in the child. He came to us after we found out the trauma lying in the background, and when we solved that trauma, the person's fears disappeared. For this reason, violence, especially the real violence in today's child education, when the child sees the mother's face falling or when he sees the father upset, the child will be able to say to himself, "Alas, I've done something wrong. As punishment, that's enough." For example, how about physical neglect? You come home, the child stays at the door. I never forget this. When a young person wanted to get married, he said that he wouldn't marry a working woman. We questioned and searched. When I came home, there was always a white sheet of paper everywhere. This food is in the fridge, that thing is there. My mom was always busy, my dad was busy. I don't want to get married to raise such a child, he said. A violent person is a person who is incapable of expressing his own opinion. It is a habit left over to humanity from savagery. It has nothing to do with our religious values. It has nothing to do with a prophetic teaching. We should not be a society of violence. We need to change these wrong ideas in our minds. We need to rewrite our cultural codes and return to the prophetic style.
Does a person become a homosexual as a result of a psychological event?
What do we understand when we say homosexuality? What we understand by homosexuality is very important. Sex has 3 legs. The first is biological sex, it's genetical. The second is gender, sexual identity. Sexual identity is learned afterwards. For centuries, identities that are compatible with our hormones, male gender identity and female gender identity, have formed in humanity. For example, Freud has a very good point regarding the issue. He saw that in people who appeared to be homosexuals, there was a mother who gave an overprotective love to her child, and there was a cold and distant father. In such cases, the child takes the mother as an example, not the father, in choosing a sexual role model. Now there are also transsexuals, dissatisfaction with one's own identity. When parents see that a boy behaves femininely and a girl behaves masculinely, they should not call them homosexuals. Most of them are transsexuals who are not homosexuals by any means. There are probably errors in upbringing in such cases.
Is it necessary to go to a psychologist and get professional support to solve psychological problems?
In such cases, we advise people to get help if it takes 3 days. If psychological problems last for 15 days, the person should see a specialist. For example, we ask, has a person felt good or very bad more in the last 3 months? If he has been feeling bad more than good in the last 15 days, it will be useful for him to see a specialist. But if he has felt good more than bad, he should develop himself and search for ways to solve it himself with trainings. If the person feels distressed, there is a strain in his psychological integrity. He can usually fix it in 2 weeks. If he can't solve it, he gets expert help. When it is advanced, it is often necessary to use medication. If it takes 6 months, medication is probably necessary.
What is the most basic emotion that leads a person to commit suicide? And if we have such feelings, how should we manage them?
A healthy person thinks of death, but does not think of committing suicide. While questioning a person about suicide, we ask about the thought of death. We ask about the desire to die, and then we ask about the intention to die. After that, we ask if he has attempted to die. The brain has a feature. When the serotonin level decreases in the brain remembers death more and questions death in everything. He thinks like this: I don't enjoy anything. Should I die? Is it more tempting to die? Why do I live? By the time he reaches the point of suicide, serotonin is already low in the brain. He is depressed. He won't get better with advice or a conference. It is a disease. In fact, there is a famous incident that Jung narrates. A patient called him after 12 p.m. He said, I'm going to commit suicide. Jung spent more than half an hour with him telling him about why he shouldn't commit suicide. After that, he said he gave up the idea. Jung asked, which one among my words affected you? The patient said, no, nothing you said affected me, but you spent half an hour with me. It means I'm valuable. It means life is worth living. That's why I've given up. It is certain that many of those commit suicide feel worthless. They think their life is meaningless. Because they feel that way, they don't think about committing suicide when they feel that they are valued.
What is the most common case you encounter in our country, and what do you think the reason for it?
Interestingly, the most common case is emotional disorders. Bipolar disorders. It is experienced a lot. There is something in the background of it, a characteristic of Eastern societies. We are an emotion-based society. Western societies are thought-based societies. Eastern societies, usually the Mesopotamian culture, learn either through pain or by connecting their heart and feelings to someone. In such cases, an Eastern culture that could not manage emotional disorders emerged in this century. It's not only in the Middle East, the whole Asia is also included. We, as a society, are not very good at managing emotions. Therefore, related to managing emotions, subthreshold mood is what we see a lot. Formerly, it was known as manic depressive. Now, emotional disorders are defined as bipolar 2 and bipolar 3. We come across the slight form of them a lot, but we can say that the advanced form is often related to genetic characteristics.
There are some tests, such as temperament types and personality analysis. Is man an easily decipherable book? Do our deeds that we do unaware reveal psychological information?
There is a very nice scale of character strengths developed by Gardner. He specifies 24 character values here. There are many character values such as being honest, fair, hardworking, helpful, empathetic, and compassionate. There are also 12 personalities, basic personalities. 30 to 40% of the personality of these personality types, formerly it was said to be 50%, comes genetically. They're innate. Some people are introverted, some are extroverted, and some have high musical intelligence. It is even defined as emotional intelligence nowadays. There are many types of intelligence. There's a connection between those types of intelligence and personality structure. We divide personality groups as A, B, C clusters. 30 to 40% of them are genetic. 60 to 70% are learned later. We are currently preparing a project. Measuring the personality according to the current situation of the person does not produce 100% conviction. You need to take the resume, dreams, and ideals of the person into consideration. An opinion is formed about that person based on the synthesis of the three. It means an evaluation that takes several hours. But there are also quick tests. These quick tests provide 60 to 70% information. The best one provides 80%. 80% is a good rate. Our aim is to do it with scientific methods and make it possible for everyone to apply. A person does not necessarily need to be knowledgeable to do it.
We often hear a statement from psychologists. Let's go back to your childhood. Why do the things that a person experienced when he was young have such an active role in his life? How is it possible to be affected so much, though one doesn't understand things very much at that age?
Childhood period is 0 to 3 years. Almost 50% of the information a person learns in his life is learned between the ages of 0 and 3. What is important in the period of 0 to 3 years? Motherhood is important, or the person who replaces the mother even if there is no mother. One-on-one, secure, ongoing, and consistent relationship. If this relationship exists, the child thinks life is safe. He says, I am valuable, I am valued. Human body needs all ego elements. Similarly, developing human spirit needs love, respect, appreciation, and being listened to. When you do not meet them, childhood traumas occur in the developing spirit of this child. When we examine the diseases at an older age, we see that they are connected with childhood traumas. Going back to childhood traumas and childhood is the old method. You go back to the age of childhood. If you do not manage it well, children turn out to be enemies of their parents. Therefore, as we go back to childhood in these new therapy techniques, we ask, what is the psychological dimension of it? It is a treatment method that does not cause harm. We find a person's character strengths, weak character strengths, advanced character strengths. We carry out special treatments of 10 to 20 sessions based on them. Thus, we eliminate the risks of going back to that childhood period.
What is the biggest reason why a person can't say no to anything and gain an identity for himself?
There's usually something about the childhood upbringing. If you say no, you won't be loved. If you say no, you're left alone. If you say no, you won't be happy. A child may have been raised in such a family environment. In such cases, the attitudes of the parents may also be wrong. The child is brought up through emotional blackmail. The child is taught something unawares. For example, I won't love you if you don't do this. In cases in which the mothers use love like a cane and the motherhood is a threat, the father uses fatherhood as a threat. And unfortunately, they do it with good intentions. They say, if you don't do what I say, I won't forgive you. May my breast milk be haram to you. If you raise your child by saying such things due to the fear of losing the mother's love in such situations, a feeling of saying yes to everything that comes from the parents occurs. Learning pattern in emotion management. I have to say yes to everything coming from the authority. I shouldn't say no to everything. The child learns that way. Therefore, if a mother or father uses motherhood as a threat against the child in this way, saying that they will not forgive him as parents, this child will feel both love and anger towards the mother. And this child always grows up with a sense of guilt. If this person generally if he wants to learn, there is a cure for it.
When you first started your profession, did you have a fear of patients with schizophrenia, nervous breakdowns, and temper tantrums? And can you share a few of your memories regarding the issue with us?
During the assistantship period, as a traditional education, they immediately send the assistant to the closed ward in the first year, which is very appropriate. There was a patient. He was my patient. I took his photo. He entered the clinic and they didn't notice him. The psychologist came to me while I was questioning and said, "There's an axe hanging around his neck." There was an axe around his neck. And he was an interesting patient. He used to cut his arm, dip bread into his blood and eat. He was such a patient. He entered with an axe. In other words, if the psychologist hadn't seen it during the first interview, he would have remained there with an axe. There was another patient I will never forget. There was a soldier. He had tics like this. We couldn't decide whether he was a malingerer pretending to be ill to escape military service or he was suffering from Tourette syndrome and did it automatically and involuntarily. There was a special substance. It was a free substance then. When somebody took that substance, he would live in a fantasy world. Our teacher somehow did something with that substance. It was applied as a test for narco-analysis. The soldier began to walk around like this, one hand in the air, one hand here. We asked, "Why are you walking around like that?" He said, "There are 3 blondes here, there are 3 brunettes there." At that moment, he had tics while saying it. In other words, the substance revealed the world of imagination in his brain. And since his tics continued in the meantime, we decided that it was a disease. It was applied because there was no other choice. Since it was a drug on the market and it was a drug for special use, we were able to use it. It is not sold now. If we wanted to do it right now, we couldn't.
Wrong marriages, observed severe traumas, and the fears that follow. Maybe we will come across good people, but trusting someone is too risky. We are afraid of suffering. How can someone who says so overcome this psychological problem?
Of course, it is a very complicated problem. It can't be fixed with 1 or 2 nice words and advice. In such cases, there are currently 3 types of treatment in the world. One is the minimum treatment, the first-line treatment. See the practitioner. It is treated. Many psychiatric problems with a high probability of being cured. The second is optimum treatment. What does optimum treatment include? See the specialist, some tests are done, and then improvement is checked. The third one is maximum treatment. It is done only in advanced centers. Examinations are made in places where neurology and psychiatry are together or in the universities where infrastructure is more developed. As I've mentioned, maximum evaluations are made. After that, treatment is done. Therefore, if a person has psychiatric problems, if he is resistant to treatment, if it lasts for more than 6 months, if he thinks about death, if he thinks that this is the last option, in such cases, maximum treatment is necessary, not minimum or optimum. I can't forget this incident. There was a retired general who was an aviation officer. Once he brought his wife to me. He said, "This is the constitutional court." I never forget it. In other words, he meant, "We have applied the whole legal process. Do whatever you can and treat my wife." Indeed, we did something. We did the tests, we prescribed medication, and thank goodness she got better. But all those examinations and tests are necessary.
Especially as young individuals, we get attached to people, things, and matter. This feeling of over-attachment hurts us. What is the psychological reason for it, and how can we use those emotions correctly?
One of the basic human emotions is the sense of attachment. It is confused with addiction. When a child is born, he sees the feeling of attachment to his mother, the first attachment object. He takes shelter in her lap and relaxes. Later, as he grows up and begins to walk, the father becomes the object of attachment. Then toys, home, family, siblings. A person who can manage the sense of attachment manages his life. The sense of attachment and the object of attachment change with the level of development of the person. The attachment object is the mother in childhood. As he grows up, it becomes the society. He doesn't live only for himself. He is attached to the society he lives in too. He does something for it too. As he develops, he also does something for humanity. As he develops more, he does something for the universe. As he develops more, he is attached to the Creator. He who knows everything, controls everything, is omnipotent, has unlimited power, has unlimited will, has unlimited knowledge and wisdom, can control everything. Divinity means being able to control. When we connect our sense of attachment to such an attachment, we will be happy whether we are in a dungeon or in a palace. Wherever you are, you can be happy. If we want to be the Maulana of this time, we don't have to go back to that time. Let's put it into practice today. Let's feel the consolation, peace, and trust of being attached. Be sure that no one can make you unhappy.
If you have any advice to our brothers and sisters in the team, will you express it briefly?
The service you provide is a kind of religious and ethical education service in which the internet is currently used. That's why you don't just offer today's education. You also offer education for the future. New generations will learn a lot from you. Know this. Do not belittle the work you do.